And the crisis hasn't really changed anything in this respect?
What has changed is that there's probably a bit lower fixed salaries for these people and a much more bigger bonus element, but these bonuses are now, we've learned from the crisis, more long-term incentives rather than just a short-term incentive and forgetting about the future of the company, just getting the bonus after 1 year and then moving on.
If you say that salespeople are still popular, are still needed, still wanted in the companies, does that mean that Russians still have that habit of buy, which they used to have before the crisis? Did the crisis change anything in this respect?
I think a lot of investors in this country have become much more cautious. Before that, you took a bit higher risk, but you also got a much higher return. If you now look at the same return in euro and in dollar terms, it's 30% less. So obviously people have become much more cautious, and where half a year or a year ago they would have hired 2 or 3 top execs, they would now be a bit more greedy and maybe just hire 1 or 2 people.
Do you think that Russia may face sort of a consumer crisis, that people will not be interested in buying new mobile phones, new cameras, new ties, whatever, every month, every week?
Well, I'm German by origin, and sometimes I feel that if we Germans were a bit more like the Russians, our economy would grow much further, because when we get our salary, we save half of it. We put almost all of it into the bank, and we are much more conservative. Over here, we have quite a lot of people in the office, and when I pay salaries, usually the salary is gone within a week. They spend it quite quickly, and based on that, I don't think there's going to be a consumer crisis.
And what do they live on for the other 3 weeks?
Well, luckily,
they steal from you, or they borrow from you, or what?
Yeah, some will come back and borrow and come back with a nice story. But luckily, over here, you still have the thing that you have to pay salary twice a month. Maybe that's actually based on that. We were always joking that this rule of paying salary twice a month in advance and then a final payment actually may result
half a salary.
Half the salary, yes.
It's paid in halves.
Yeah. Exactly. And we were probably thinking that this comes back to the kind of consumerism on the Russian market, that people spend their money fairly quickly, and rather than giving it all in one sum, it's obviously quite clever to do it in two sums.
Says Michael Germershausen, the managing director of the Antal International Russia Recruitment Agency. Spotlight will be back shortly, right after a break. So stay with us. Don't go.
First mentioned in cave drawings. Called a bull with a horse's mane by Pliny. Completely exterminated in the wild by 1921. Now the population is renewed from the animals living in captivity. Bison World on RT.
Do you want to get a fuller picture? Don't miss it on RT and our website. Every month we give you the future. We help you understand how we'll get there and what tomorrow will bring. The best in science and technology from across Russia and around the world. Join us for Technology Update on RT.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm Al Grunov, and just a reminder that our guest in the studio today is Michael Germershausen, the Managing Director of the Antal International Russia Recruitment Agency. We're talking about recruitment. We're talking about how to make money by getting a job in Russia. Michael says that it's pretty easy. You have to be in the right place in the right time, right? You mentioned an interesting thing. You said that the expats, the foreigners working for Russian companies, actually get higher salaries than the Russians. often get higher salaries than the Russians. But you said that there are different expats. Some of them just come here for a 1-year, 2-year, 3-year contract, and the others live here, have a house, a wife, have Russian children, so go to Russian schools, have resident permits, and need sometimes even Russian passports. So they are Russian citizens, but they are still considered as expats by Russian companies and get higher salaries?
Well, I think this is a bit of a myth that expats actually getting higher salaries. Their overall cost is more expensive because you pay them housing, you pay them home flights, you pay them medical insurance and things like that. If you're actually comparing salaries, they are usually not that much higher. They are now, after the crisis, a bit higher because they're usually pegged to the dollar or to the euro. But in general, the salaries are not much higher for an expat. The overall package is much more expensive because of all these extras.
Well, foreign specialists coming to Russia, which sectors, which professions are in the biggest demand by the people who come seeking for a job in Moscow? And on the other hand, the employees, for whom they're looking mostly, except the salespeople that you have mentioned. Which areas? I
think that on the retail front, there is quite a big demand still for international experts, because there are so many techniques, so many interesting things that still can be learned and can be made much more efficient. If you compare the profitability of some of the retail chains operating here in Russia and compare them to how they operate in Western Europe, at which low profit rates they are working there, it will eventually move to the Western low profit rates over here, but there's still a lot of things that can be learned. So a lot of these people are invited into the economy. And I'd say that oil and gas now again, we all heard that Gazprom yesterday announced their investment budget for next year, and there will even be a slight increase, and that will mean a lot of new jobs, and that will mean a lot of new jobs in areas where some of the Moscovites, even the Russians, don't want to go, and it is quite difficult to motivate people to go there. And there again, there's a lot of foreigners who don't have a problem to be based in Yuzhny Sakhalinsk or in some parts of the world where it's dark all day long.
Well, the Russian government has been trying for quite a while to protect the local labor market. So have you met troubles finding quotas for foreign workers because of the government measures to protect their own labor?
It is obviously quite a bureaucratic process, which I think over here was copied from the European Union system, which has a pretty similar system. So it is not easy. You have to plan quite a bit of an advance. We ourselves, as a recruiting company, don't have to ask for quota for our employers. We only for our own staff. So yes, it's not an easy process. It sometimes makes the whole thing a bit more difficult. But as in every country, there's not a lot you can do about it. It would be very nice if it was easier. I think it would create a lot of more jobs also for local people if it was easier to obtain work permits and actually set up companies also for foreign investors.
And when they are looking for a foreign specialist, does it imply that he has to speak at least some Russian?
Yes. These days, if you compare to the 90s, that wasn't really the requirement. These days, if international companies come to us, or even Russian employees come to us, they say, well, first option is a Russian. If we can't find a Russian with those qualifications we want, please find us a foreigner. And ideally, the foreigner should have already worked in Russia and has already learned the language or speaks the language.
They should be able to communicate at least.
Exactly.
Because, well, Russia today may be an exception, because we have dozens of people working here for Russia Today television who don't speak any Russian.
Exactly, yes. But even in the big cities like Petersburg or Moscow, you get by quite well, even if you don't speak Russian. But as soon as you go out into the regions, we will struggle if you don't speak the Russian language.
And the expats themselves, can you say that they are sort of a favorite industries, favorite companies who the potential employees want to be employed?
Not really. I don't think there's any favorite. What we've seen over the years is that a lot of the big Russian blue chip companies have become much more interesting to Russian and to foreigners as well, because they've become much more official. 10 years ago, a lot of these companies would be operating half white and half grey, as they were saying, but these days they all have official work permits and official contracts and official salaries and things like that, and they've become much more Western, and in some instances they are much more efficient even than their Western counterparts.
And if we talk